I'm Samantha Mitchell, 34. And last Thanksgiving my own brother slapped handcuffs on me in front of our entire family. After 3 years of deployment, I thought coming home would be healing. Instead, Ryan, my little brother and town hero cop, arrested me over mashed potatoes and gravy. What he didn't know was that I outranked him by more than a few pay grades. The look on his face when his captain saluted me still makes me smile. If you've ever been underestimated by family, you might understand why. Before I dive deeper into this story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments, hit that like button, and subscribe to see more family drama with unexpected twists. The drive to my parents' house in Millfield. My stomach tightened with an all too familiar anxiety. My duffel bag felt unusually heavy as I approached the front door. Before I could knock, Mom flung it open, her face lighting up with a smile that momentarily erased the fine lines around her eyes. "Sammy, you're finally home." She wrapped me in a hug that smelled of cinnamon and pine sol, her traditional holiday cleaning scent. Dad appeared behind her, grayer than I remembered but with the same firm handshake that transformed into an awkward hug. "Look at you, kiddo. Still in one piece," he said, examining me as if checking for visible damage. "Takes more than a few years overseas to break a Mitchell," I replied with practiced ease, falling into our old pattern. The living room was exactly as I remembered. The same faded floral sofa, the wall of family photos chronicling our lives. I noticed immediately that Ryan's side of the photo wall had expanded considerably. His police academy graduation, receiving commendations, shaking hands with the mayor. My side remained frozen in time. College graduation, basic training, one formal military photo where my insignia was barely visible. Ryan and I had always been competitors rather than allies. 3 years younger, he had nonetheless always commanded more attention. Where I was studious and reserved, Ryan was charismatic and outgoing. When I announced my acceptance to West Point, fluffing pillows that didn't need fluffing. "She works at City Hall. Very smart girl." "That's nice," I said, forcing enthusiasm. "How's he doing at the department?" Dad perked up instantly. "Youngest sergeant in department history. The chief says he's on track to make lieutenant before 30. The whole town loves him." I nodded, swallowing the familiar sting. My own achievements, graduating top of my class at West Point, 2 Bronze Stars, and my recent promotion to Brigadier General at 34, remained unmentioned because they were largely unknown. I'd made a decision years ago to keep my rapid advancement quiet from my family, partly because of operational security, but mostly because I was tired of my accomplishments becoming footnotes to Ryan's local heroics. "And you're still doing your army thing?" Mom asked, her tone suggesting she was inquiring about a hobby rather than my 15-year military career. "Yes, Mom. Still doing my army thing," I replied, omitting that my army thing now involved commanding thousands of troops and coordinating multi-agency homeland security operations. The doorbell rang, saving me from further explanation. "That must be Aunt Judith." Mom hurried to the door. Aunt Judith, Dad's sister and a retired high school principal, had always been my secret ally. Unlike my parents, she whispered in my ear. "Or should I say general? Your secret's safe with me." I felt a rush of gratitude for her simple acknowledgement. Each greeting followed the same pattern. Polite inquiries about my army job that barely masked their disinterest, followed by eager questions about Ryan. Speaking of Ryan, at 31, he looked like a recruitment poster for small-town law enforcement, broad-shouldered, clean-cut, with our father's confident stance and our mother's easy smile. Arms spread wide. The soldier returns. He embraced me with camera-ready brotherly affection that didn't quite reach his eyes. When he pulled back, I noticed his quick assessment of my civilian clothes, dark jeans and a simple sweater, as if disappointed I hadn't shown up in uniform for him to contrast with his own. "Everyone, this is Heather," Ryan announced, pulling the blonde forward. "And this is Mike from the department. Thought I'd invite him since he's got no family in town." Heather offered a practiced smile. As everyone settled in the living room, I wondered for the 100th time if coming home had been a mistake. The distance I'd maintained had been protective, a buffer against exactly these feelings of being an outsider in my own family. But Aunt Judith caught my eye across the room and gave me an encouraging nod. "At least one person here saw me clearly." My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from Captain Harrison at the local police department confirming our meeting tomorrow about the emergency preparedness drill I'd been sent to coordinate. I silenced it without responding. Work could wait until after dinner. Tonight was about family, even if that concept felt increasingly complicated with each passing minute. Mom outdid herself with Thanksgiving dinner. A golden brown turkey centerpiece surrounded by all the traditional fixings. The dining room table, extended with leaves to accommodate everyone, groaned under the weight of casserole dishes, gravy boats, and Mom's special cranberry relish that made an appearance only once a year. "Sam, sit here next to Ryan," Mom directed. Ryan carved the turkey with theatrical flourish, distributing white and dark meat according to everyone's preferences. He'd somehow cataloged this information about each family member, including Heather's preference for white meat only, demonstrating his attention to detail and his desire for everyone to notice it. "So, Samantha, pushing papers and counting supplies, right, sis?" "Something like that," I said neutrally. My actual role coordinating strategic homeland security operations was classified in many aspects. "Had to take down an armed suspect last week," Ryan added, cutting into his turkey. "Guy was holding up the pharmacy on Elm. Went in through the back and had him cuffed before he knew what hit him." "That sounds dangerous," I commented. Ryan scoffed. "Nothing compared to what SWAT usually handles, but I guess it might seem intense to someone who works behind a desk." I took a deliberate sip of water. My phone buzzed again in my pocket. I ignored it. "Now, Ryan," Aunt Judith interjected, "I'm sure your sister has seen her share of dangerous situations." "Sure. Paper cuts can be brutal," Ryan said, generating laughs around the table. Dad, perhaps sensing the growing tension, attempted to change the subject. "How long are you home for, Sam?" "Just through the weekend. I'm coordinating a training exercise before heading back to D.C. "A training exercise? Here." Ryan's attention sharpened. "Multi-agency emergency response drill. Standard procedure." I kept my explanation vague. "Nobody tells the police department anything," Ryan complained. "Typical federal overreach. Coming into local jurisdictions without proper coordination." I bit my tongue. The drill had been coordinated through his captain for weeks. Ryan simply hadn't been looped in, likely due to his junior status despite his sergeant stripes. "So, Samantha," Heather pressed, "any special someone in your life? Military romances are so intense, or so I've heard." "No time," I replied, the standard answer I gave to deflect personal questions. "Sam's married to the Army," Ryan joked. "Always has been. Remember when she missed Dad's retirement party for some training exercise?" "It wasn't just some training exercise," I said quietly, her tone making it clear whose disappointment she meant. "We're all together now." My phone buzzed a third time. This time I discreetly checked the screen under the table. 3 messages from Captain Harrison. "Confirming your attendance at tomorrow's briefing, General Mitchell. *, we've prepared everything according to your specifications. *, please advise if you need anything else before the exercise begins." I tucked the phone away, catching Ryan watching me suspiciously. "Important Army business?" he asked sarcastically. "What's this I hear about the military becoming too political these days? No offense, Sam, but seems like standards are dropping to meet quotas." I felt a familiar heat rising in my neck. "I can assure you, Uncle Pete, the standards in my units have never been higher." "Your units?" Ryan raised an eyebrow. "Getting a bit territorial about your supply closet, sis?" The table erupted in laughter, and I found myself transported back to childhood dinners where Ryan's jokes at my expense were always met with approval. "You know," I said carefully, "very important." "It is important," I replied, my patience wearing thin. "Just like your work is important. The difference is everyone can see what I do," Ryan shot back. "I protect this community in real tangible ways. Not some abstract mission overseas that nobody understands." "Ryan," Aunt Judith warned. "No, it's fine," I said. "We all serve in different ways." I took a deep breath, reminding myself that engaging would only escalate things. 15 years of military discipline helped me maintain my composure. "More turkey, anyone?" Ryan dominated the conversation with stories from the police department, each tale carefully crafted to highlight his bravery and quick thinking. No public recognition, just the quiet satisfaction of a mission accomplished. My phone buzzed yet again. This time the message was more urgent. General Mitchell. We have a situation developing that requires your immediate attention. Please advise on your availability. I excused myself to the kitchen to make a quick call, but as I was dialing, he repeated mockingly, "The paper pushers need a lot of supervision on Thanksgiving, do they?" I slipped my phone into my pocket. "Ryan, can we not do this today?" "Do what?" "I'm actually here to." But before I could finish, Ryan's police radio crackled to life on his belt. He unclipped it and listened to a message I couldn't make out. "Copy that," he responded, his expression changing to something I couldn't quite read. When he looked up at me, his eyes had hardened. Without another word, he turned and walked back to the dining room, leaving me with an unsettling feeling that something had shifted. I followed him back to the table, where dessert was still being enjoyed. But Ryan remained standing, his hand now resting on something at his hip that hadn't been there before. His service weapon. The atmosphere in the dining room transformed instantly when everyone noticed Ryan's changed demeanor. Conversations halted mid-sentence. Forks hovered between plates and mouths. My mother's smile froze, then faltered as she registered the sudden tension. "Ryan?" she questioned, her voice small. His expression now completely professional, the face he likely showed to suspects rather than family members. "Samantha Mitchell," he announced in a formal tone that silenced the room completely. "I need you to stand up." Confusion rippled through the gathered family. Dad half rose from his chair. "Ryan, what is this about?" "Police business, Dad." A power play to humiliate me in front of the family? Or had there been some actual mistake? "Turn around and place your hands behind your back," Ryan instructed, now unclipping handcuffs from his belt. "Ryan," Mom cried, dropping her serving spoon with a clatter. "What are you doing?" My brother ignored her, maintaining his official persona. The words hit me like physical blows. Government property? The classified documents in my briefcase were all properly authorized. I had every clearance needed to possess them. "Ryan," while the rest of the family seemed paralyzed by shock. "Son, you can't be serious," Dad finally managed, his face flushing with anger. I received confirmation of an outstanding warrant, instead taking my wrists and clamping the cold metal handcuffs around them with practiced efficiency. The click of the locks echoed in the silent room. Mom began crying, quiet sobs that she tried to muffle with her napkin. Uncle Pete placed an awkward hand on her shoulder while staring at me with new suspicion in his eyes. Even the children had gone completely still, wide-eyed at the unfolding adult drama. I could have resisted. I could have invoked my rank, made calls, ended this farce immediately. But something held me back. Perhaps the military strategist in me recognized that allowing this to play out might finally resolve the lifelong competition with my brother in a way that confrontation never could. "It's okay," I said to my stunned family, working to keep my voice steady. "There's been a misunderstanding. It will be cleared up. Do you understand these rights as I have read them to you?" But it was impersonal, the way he'd handle any suspect. As we passed Mom, I tried to give her a reassuring look, but her eyes were fixed on Ryan with an expression I'd never seen before, doubt mixed with disappointment. "I'll get this sorted out," Dad announced, grabbing his coat. "I'm coming with you." Some out on porches enjoying the holiday evening. Now they had a new sight to feast on, the Mitchell girl being led away in handcuffs by her police officer brother. As Ryan guided me into the back of his patrol car, I caught a glimpse of Mrs. Henderson next door, phone already to her ear, undoubtedly spreading the news throughout the neighborhood grapevine. Within an hour, everyone in Millfield would know. The patrol car door closed with a definitive thunk, sealing me in the cage-like back seat. "The law applies to everyone," Ryan replied, starting the engine. "Even family." As we pulled away from the curb, I saw Dad rushing to his car, phone pressed to his ear. Mom stood frozen in the doorway. Other family members clustered behind her in a tableau of holiday disaster. "You know this is a mistake," I said calmly once we were moving. Ryan met my eyes in the rearview mirror. "The warrant says otherwise." Apparently, You've been carrying classified materials without proper authorization. I have every authorization I need, I replied. A smirk played at the corner of his mouth. That's what they all say. The childhood memory surfaced unbidden. Ryan at 11 years old. You always thought you were better than us, Ryan said quietly, his eyes flicking to Mike to ensure his colleague was engaged with the radio. Better than this town, better than the family. Running off to play soldier while I did the real work of protecting people. Is that what this is about? I asked. Settling scores? This is about upholding the law, Ryan insisted. But it felt much longer confined in the back of the patrol car with my hands secured uncomfortably behind me. I watched the familiar streets of Millfield pass by, the park where we'd played as children, the high school we'd both attended, the movie theater where I'd had my first date. This small town had always felt too confining, while Ryan had thrived within its boundaries. As we pulled into the station parking lot, I noticed several police vehicles and what looked like federal government cars. Ryan apparently noticed too, his brow furrowing. What's going on? He muttered to Mike. Nobody said anything about feds being involved. I remained silent, the pieces beginning to fall into place. The text messages from Captain Harrison, the timing of the emergency preparedness drill, the misinterpreted theft of government property. This was about to become very uncomfortable for my brother. Ryan parked and came around to retrieve me from the back seat. The captain's waiting for you inside. Seems pretty intense. Ryan straightened his shoulders, apparently interpreting this as confirmation of the seriousness of my alleged crime. Roger that. As we entered the station, the familiar bureaucratic interior came into view. Desks, computers, the smell of burnt coffee and paper. Several officers stopped what they were doing to watch as Ryan paraded me through the bullpen area. And there, standing near the captain's office, was the man who was about to change everything. Police Captain James Harrison, a 20-year veteran I'd been coordinating with for weeks about tomorrow's emergency response drill. Captain Harrison turned as we approached, his expression shifting from professional readiness to utter confusion as he registered me in handcuffs being led by Ryan. Sergeant Mitchell, he began, his voice carrying enough authority to halt Ryan mid-stride. What is the meaning of this? Ryan straightened to attention. Sir, I'm bringing in a suspect based on the warrant that came through for theft of government property. Samantha Mitchell. Captain Harrison stared at Ryan for a long moment, then shifted his gaze to me. Captain Harrison snapped to attention and offered a crisp, formal salute. General Mitchell, he said clearly, his voice carrying through the now silent station. We're here as requested for the emergency preparedness drill briefing. Though I admit I didn't expect you to arrive quite like this. Captain Harrison maintained his salute until I nodded acknowledgement, unable to return it with my hands still cuffed behind my back. At ease, Captain, I said quietly. Remove those handcuffs immediately. Ryan fumbled with the keys, his usual composure completely shattered. I could feel his hands trembling as he unlocked the cuffs, and I discreetly rotated my wrists to restore circulation once they were free. Sir, I received confirmation of a warrant, Ryan stammered. What warrant? Captain Harrison demanded. A young officer approached hesitantly, holding a printout. Sir, this came through an hour ago. Flagged as priority due to national security implications. Captain Harrison snatched the paper and scanned it quickly before looking up, his expression a mixture of disbelief and growing anger. This is a notification about the classified materials General Mitchell is authorized to transport for tomorrow's joint exercise, not a warrant for her arrest. He thrust the paper toward Ryan, color draining further from his face as he reached the section clearly stating, Brigadier General Samantha Mitchell is authorized to transport classified documents pertaining to Operation Resilient Shield. I thought. It looked like. Ryan's voice trailed off. You thought, Captain Harrison repeated, his tone dangerously quiet. You arrested a one-star general, your own sister, at a family dinner, without bothering to verify the nature of the communication or contacting me directly. The other officers in the room had shifted from shock to various stages of reaction, some wincing in sympathy, others barely concealing smirks at Ryan's monumental error, and a few looking genuinely concerned about the potential fallout from this incident. Captain, I interjected. Perhaps we could continue this discussion somewhere more private? Harrison nodded sharply. My office. Now. He looked around at the gathered officers. The rest of you return to your duties. Not a word about this outside this department, understood? As we moved toward the captain's office, I could hear the murmurs already beginning behind us. Ryan trailed behind, head down. General Mitchell, I cannot begin to express my apologies for this incident. I assure you, this is not how the Millfield Police Department conducts business. I understand, Captain. I replied professionally. Miscommunications happen in our line of work. Though this one is particularly unfortunate. Ryan stood rigidly by the door, looking like he might be sick. For those who aren't familiar with military hierarchy, Captain Harrison said with a pointed look at Ryan, she's been coordinating with us for weeks on the multi-agency emergency response exercise scheduled for tomorrow. Ryan's eyes widened further. Weeks? But I never heard. Because it wasn't your jurisdiction, Sergeant, Harrison cut him off. This operation involves federal, state, and local agencies coordinating under General Mitchell's command. Your role would have been explained at tomorrow's briefing, along with everyone else's. I watched my brother process this information, that not only was his paper-pushing sister a general, but she would effectively be commanding him and his entire department tomorrow. The stolen government property referenced in the communication, Harrison continued, his tone scathing, refers to the classified documents General Mitchell is authorized to transport and handle. Documents with security clearance levels well above anyone in this room. Ryan looked at me. Really looked at me, perhaps for the first time in years. You're a general? Brigadier General, I confirmed quietly. 1 star. Since when? The promotion came through last year. Before that, I was a colonel. Ryan sank into the nearest chair without asking permission, his legs apparently giving out. All this time. When we thought you were just pushing papers? You arrested a high-ranking military officer without cause, compromised a classified operation, and potentially damaged relations between local law enforcement and military command. I'd like a few minutes alone with my brother before we address the professional implications. Harrison looked uncertain. General, under normal circumstances I'd agree. But given the nature of... He was interrupted by a commotion outside, raised voices approaching rapidly. The door burst open to reveal my father, red-faced and furious. What the hell is going on here? Dad demanded, then faltered as he registered the tension in the room. His eyes moved from Ryan's slumped form to Captain Harrison's rigid posture to my calm demeanor. Mr. Mitchell, Captain Harrison began, there's been a misunderstanding. Dad. I interrupted gently. There's something you should know. Just then, the door opened again, and a man in a dark suit entered, followed by 2 uniformed military police officers. I recognized him immediately, Colonel Jenkins from the Department of Homeland Security, one of my liaisons for tomorrow's exercise. General Mitchell, he said, saluting crisply. We received word of a situation. Is everything all right? The look on my father's face as he heard my rank addressed directly was something I'll never forget, confusion, disbelief, and then slowly dawning realization. General, he repeated, looking at me as if seeing a stranger. Yes, sir, Colonel Jenkins confirmed. Brigadier General Samantha Mitchell. The 2 of them now matching bookends of shock. Captain Harrison took charge of the increasingly crowded office. Colonel Jenkins, thank you for your concern. Though he shot a suspicious glance at Ryan before withdrawing with his MPs. When the door closed, the office fell into silence again. My father looked between Ryan and me, clearly struggling to process everything. You're a general? He finally asked, his voice barely above a whisper. All this time when you thought I was just playing soldier. I couldn't keep the edge from my voice. Yes, Dad. I'm a general. I command thousands of troops and coordinate homeland security operations. The Army thing you and Mom dismiss so casually has been my life's work and a career I'm proud of. Why didn't you tell us? Dad asked. Would it have mattered? I countered. When has anything I've accomplished ever compared to Ryan's achievements in your eyes? The hurt that flashed across my father's face made me regret the words as soon as they left my mouth. The three of us sat in uncomfortable silence. Ryan finally raised his head, his expression a complex mixture of embarrassment, shock, and something else I couldn't quite identify. "You let me arrest you," he said slowly. "You could have stopped it at any point. Why didn't you?" It was a good question, one I'd been asking myself since the handcuffs closed around my wrists. "Maybe I wanted you to see me clearly for once," I admitted, "without the filter of your own assumptions." The police station conference room offered more privacy than Captain Harrison's office. He'd removed his service belt and placed it on a chair by the door, a small gesture that spoke volumes about his shifting mindset. For several minutes, neither of us spoke. The initial shock had worn off, leaving a raw, exposed feeling between us. Dad had stepped out to call Mom and explain what he could, leaving us alone to face the conversation we'd been avoiding for decades. "You could end my career with a word," Ryan finally said, breaking the silence. His voice was flat, resigned. "One call to the right person about what happened tonight." "Is that what you think of me?" I asked. "That I'd destroy your career out of spite?" Ryan's laugh was hollow. "Wouldn't you? After I humiliated you in front of the entire family? After I've been dismissive of your service for years?" "That's not how I operate," I said simply. "And it's not how you should think about family." "Family," Ryan repeated, as if testing the word. "We haven't really been family in a long time, have we? Competitors, maybe. Strangers, definitely. But not family." The truth of his words stung, but I couldn't deny them. When did it start? This need to one-up each other. Ryan leaned back, his eyes fixed on the ceiling tiles. "I need to win something bigger so Dad will look at me that way." The memory was fuzzy, but I recalled the science fair project, a complex demonstration of centripetal force that had taken weeks to perfect. "You started playing football the next year," I remembered. Dad walked around telling everyone his daughter was going to be an officer, but at night, I heard them arguing about whether they should have tried harder to talk you out of it. This was news to me. It was perfect for them. Dangerous enough to be respectable, local enough to keep me in orbit. I digested this, seeing our family dynamic from an entirely new angle. "So while I thought they were favoring you, they were trying to hold on to at least one kid," Ryan finished. "And I resented you for having the freedom to leave." "Freedom?" I laughed bitterly. "Ryan, do you have any idea how many times I've called home from different time zones, different countries, wondering if anyone would pick up? How many holidays and birthdays I've missed? While I was writing parking tickets and breaking up domestic disputes in the same 10-block radius. Is that why you've been so dismissive? Because you thought I was judging your choices?" Ryan's silence was answer enough. "I never judged you," I said quietly. "I envied you. You had a normal life, a community that valued you, parents who could see and understand your work. A one-star general at 34. That's incredible, Sam." "Yes, it is," I acknowledged without false modesty. "I've worked incredibly hard to get where I am." It was operational security. Then, as I advanced faster than expected, I didn't know how to bring it up without sounding like I was bragging. And honestly, part of me was afraid. Afraid of what? That it still wouldn't be enough, I admitted. That Dad would nod and change the subject to your latest commendation. That Mom would worry more but understand less. Ryan ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it momentarily transported me back to our childhood. My little brother, frustrated by homework, making the exact same motion. "I've been tracking your career," he said suddenly. "What?" "Online. Through military news sites, public records. I know about the Bronze Stars, the rapid promotions. You've been following my career?" Ryan nodded, not meeting my eyes. "Every promotion. Every assignment I could find information about. I have a whole folder on my computer." "But why? If you knew all that, why treat me like you were nothing special?" Ryan finished. "Because it was easier than admitting that while you were out there being extraordinary, I was just here, being ordinary." The admission hung between us, raw and honest in a way we hadn't been with each other since childhood. "There's nothing ordinary about what you do," I said firmly. "You protect people. You make this community safer. That matters, Ryan. Before he could respond, a sharp knock at the door interrupted us. Captain Harrison poked his head in, his expression apologetic. Sorry to interrupt, General, but the mayor and emergency management team have arrived for the preliminary briefing. They're rather insistent on starting given the unusual circumstances. I glanced at my watch, surprised to find that nearly an hour had passed. Of course, Captain. We'll be right there. As Harrison withdrew, Ryan stood and straightened his uniform. I should probably make myself scarce. I doubt anyone wants the idiot who arrested the commanding officer at the briefing. Actually, I said, standing as well, as sergeant of the local police force, your presence is required. Unless you're planning to call in sick tomorrow for the actual exercise? Ryan's expression shifted from resignation to surprise. You still want me involved? After what I did? This isn't about us, Ryan. It's about making sure this community is prepared for a potential crisis. Your knowledge of local response capabilities is valuable to the operation. He studied me for a moment, perhaps trying to detect insincerity or a hidden agenda. Finding none, he nodded once. Thank you. We walked together to the larger conference room where various officials had gathered. The mayor, fire chief, hospital administrator, and representatives from surrounding jurisdictions. The room fell silent as we entered, all eyes tracking our movement. I stepped to the front of the room with the practiced ease of someone accustomed to command, while Ryan took a seat near the back. Ladies and gentlemen, I began. A multi-agency emergency response exercise designed to test our collective readiness for a potential crisis situation. As I outlined the objectives and parameters of tomorrow's drill, I noticed the shift in how people were looking at me, with respect, attention, and a seriousness I'd never received in my hometown before. Even the mayor, who had known me since I was in pigtails, addressed me as General with appropriate deference. Throughout the briefing, I caught Ryan watching me with an expression I'd never seen from him before, something like pride mixed with dawning understanding. When I assigned roles and responsibilities, I gave him a meaningful task coordinating local police response with state resources, acknowledging his expertise without special treatment. As the meeting concluded and officials filed out with their assignments, Ryan approached me. That was impressive, he said quietly. You're good at this. I've had practice. I replied with a small smile. The mayor stopped beside us, clapping Ryan on the shoulder. Your sister's quite the commanding presence, Sergeant Mitchell. You must be proud. Ryan glanced at me, then back to the mayor. Yes, sir. I am. Very proud. The simple words, spoken with sincerity rather than resentment or competition, felt like the first real breakthrough between us in years. We should get back to Mom and Dad, I suggested once everyone had cleared out. They're probably still in shock. Ryan nodded, his expression turning serious again. Sam, about tonight. I'm sorry. I really screwed up. Yes, you did, I agreed, but without rancor. And tomorrow you'll help make this town safer. That's what matters now. As we prepared to leave, Captain Harrison approached with an evidence bag containing my personal effects that had been logged during the arrest process: phone, wallet, car keys. Again, General. Though I think Sergeant Mitchell might benefit from some additional training on warrant verification procedures. Harrison's mouth twitched with suppressed amusement. I believe that can be arranged, General. Ryan accepted the implied reprimand with good grace, another small sign of change. As we walked out to the parking lot where Dad was waiting by his car, Ryan paused. You know Mom's going to completely freak out when she realizes her daughter is a general, right? For the first time that night I laughed genuinely, completing the old gesture. It wasn't a full resolution of our complex relationship, but it was a start, an acknowledgement that maybe, just maybe, there was room for both of us to succeed without diminishing the other. The porch light cast long shadows across our parents' front yard as Ryan, Dad, and I approached the house. Through the window I could see figures moving inside. Mom pacing, Aunt Judith gesturing animatedly, others sitting in stunned silence. News of the evening's events had clearly made it home before us. Her eyes red-rimmed from crying and grabbed both my hands. Samantha, are you all right? Your father called and said there was some kind of mistake that Ryan. She broke off, looking between us with confused concern. Mom, Ryan said, his voice steadier than I expected. There's something you should know about Sam. He stepped aside. This is Brigadier General Samantha Mitchell of the United States Army, he announced, his voice carrying the weight of both apology and pride. My sister outranks pretty much everyone in this county, including the police department, and I arrested her based on a misunderstood communication. The stunned silence that followed was broken by Aunt Judith's delighted laugh. Well, it's about time someone around here figured it out. I've been bursting to tell everyone for years. You knew? Mom turned to her, incredulous. Of course I knew, Aunt Judith replied. I read the military news. I pay attention to my niece's career. One-star general at 34, youngest female general officer in Army history. It's been in the papers, for heaven's sake. Mom turned back to me, her expression a complex mixture of confusion, hurt and dawning pride. A general? All this time when we thought you were just pushing papers, I finished gently. No, Mom. I command troops. I coordinate national security operations. I met his gaze directly. Would it have mattered? Would it have changed how you see my career compared to Ryan's? The uncomfortable shifting of both my parents told me everything. Uncle Pete cleared his throat awkwardly, while Heather looked like she wanted to disappear into the couch cushions. We've always been proud of you, Sammy, Mom said weakly. I know you love me. I acknowledged. But you've never really seen me, or valued what I do. Ryan stepped forward. That's on all of us, Mom. Especially me. I've spent years dismissing Sam's career because it was easier than admitting she might be doing something more important than what I was doing here. More important? Dad bristled slightly. Now wait a minute. Different, I interjected diplomatically. Different but equally valuable. That's what we need to recognize about each other. Aunt Judith clapped her hands decisively. Well, now that we've established Samantha as a military genius and Ryan made a spectacular fool of himself, perhaps we could salvage what's left of Thanksgiving dessert? For one, never got to finish my pie. The tension broke slightly as nervous laughter rippled through the room. As family members shifted, beginning to move back toward the dining room, Mom caught my arm. A general, she whispered, tears welling in her eyes again, but different ones this time. My little girl is a general. Yes, Mom, I said softly. I am. I don't even know what that means. She admitted. What you do, what your life is like. You could ask, I suggested. I can't tell you everything, but I can share more than I have been. She nodded, squeezing my hand. I'd like that. As we rejoined the group in the dining room, where Aunt Judith was already redistributing pie slices, the conversation awkwardly restarted. But now, still looking slightly uncomfortable but making an effort. It depends on the assignment, I explained. Currently, I coordinate Homeland Security operations for the Eastern Seaboard, which includes emergency response planning, like the exercise happening here tomorrow. Wait, tomorrow? Mom looked alarmed. What kind of exercise? A simulated crisis response, I explained. Multiple agencies working together to test emergency protocols. It's routine but important. And that's why you're in town? Dad asked. For work, not really for Thanksgiving at all? The hurt in his voice made me pause. I scheduled the exercise for this week specifically, so I could combine it with coming home for the holiday. I wanted to be here, Dad. He nodded, but genuine interest in understanding what I did and why it mattered. Ryan surprisingly led many of these conversations, drawing me out with questions that revealed how closely he had indeed been following my career from afar. That operation in northern Syria 3 years ago, he said at one point. It wasn't possible. I had no idea, Dad said quietly. I thought. I know what you thought, I replied without accusation. That's been the problem all along. As the evening wound down, family members began to leave, each departure marked by interactions subtly different from their arrivals. Uncle Pete shook my hand with newfound respect. Cousins who had barely acknowledged me earlier now asked for selfies with their general cousin. Even Heather, who had been mortified by her boyfriend's actions, made a point to thank me for my service with what felt like genuine appreciation. Through it all, Ryan stayed close, as if making up for years of distance in a single evening. When only my parents, Aunt Judith, Ryan and I remained, he pulled me aside. "I'll be there tomorrow," he said, "for the exercise. And I'll make sure my team is fully prepared." "I know you will," I replied. "I wouldn't have assigned you that coordination role if I didn't trust your capabilities." He nodded, accepting both the responsibility and the olive branch it represented. The next morning, as Operation Resilient Shield commenced, I stood in the command center we'd established at the town hall, watching as various agencies executed their roles in the simulated crisis response. Ryan arrived early, his uniform impeccable, his demeanor professional. Throughout the day, he performed his duties with precision and insight, confirming my assessment of his capabilities. He witnessed firsthand how I handled the pressure and complexity of command. By the exercise's conclusion, evaluators were praising the smooth integration of local and federal resources, a success by any measure. As we debriefed the operation, Ryan sat attentively, contributing valuable observations about local response patterns. Afterward, as teams dispersed and equipment was packed away, Ryan approached me once more. "I get it now," he said simply. "Get what?" "Why you do what you do. How good you are at it. I saw you today, not as my annoying older sister, but as General Mitchell." He shook his head with a rueful smile. "It was pretty impressive." "You did well yourself, Sergeant," I replied formally, then softened. "Seriously, Ryan, your team was well prepared and responsive. That reflects on your leadership." A comfortable silence between us for perhaps the first time in our adult lives. "Will you come back for Christmas?" he asked suddenly. "I'm scheduled to be in D.C., but I could probably manage a day or two," I said, surprised by the invitation. "Good," he nodded decisively. "Mom's already planning a proper celebration, now that she knows what she's celebrating." I laughed. "I'm afraid to ask what that entails." "Knowing Mom? Probably a cake with stars and stripes and your face on it." We both laughed at the image. "Will you be safe?" Mom asked, concern still evident but now balanced with understanding. "As safe as the job allows," I answered honestly. "When do you leave?" One Thanksgiving dinner gone catastrophically wrong had somehow led to a new understanding between us. As I packed my office in preparation for the new assignment, I found myself reflecting on that night, the humiliation of being handcuffed at the family table, the shock on everyone's faces at the station, the long overdue conversations that followed. It hadn't been the homecoming I expected, but perhaps it had been the one we needed. Family relationships are never simple, especially when built on years of misunderstanding and competition. But sometimes it takes a dramatic shakeup, even an arrest at Thanksgiving dinner, to break through the patterns we've established and see each other clearly for the first time. Have you ever experienced a moment when family dynamics dramatically shifted? When someone you thought you knew revealed themselves to be something entirely different? Share your story in the comments below. If you've enjoyed this journey through my family disaster turn breakthrough, please like this video and subscribe to hear more stories about family, forgiveness, and finding common ground in unexpected places. Remember, sometimes the most painful confrontations lead to the most meaningful connections. Thank you for listening, and until next time,